Introduction to Incident Response. The incident response to be covered in this course is based on the host. Host-based IR is necessary to accurately diagnose the cause and process of an accident when an accident occurs and effectively respond to the incident. Recently, it has been widely used together with the term forensics. First, let's look at the traditional incident response. Prior to the concept of the initial security system, we simply group the systems and use the network separately. Since security problems have arisen, various devices have been introduced into each network section. Since it costs a lot and takes a lot of effort to defend a host directly, we usually install security equipment on the network side for efficiency. Typical examples are firewall, IDS, IPS, and NAC. If the service needs to be outsourced, such as the IDC Center, it has been designated as a DMZ section and a stronger security policy has been applied. In addition, logs of heterogeneous devices have been integrated into SIEM to detect abnormal symptoms, and APT equipment has been introduced to try to see more traffic on the network more actively. Until recently, network defense achieved a lot in the field of information protection. However, network-based defense is showing the limit in recent target-type attacks. It is difficult to detect unusual signs in the network because it attacks after a sufficient investigation of the target in advance. For example, it is very difficult to detect on the network if you are attacking on port 80 or attacking after stealing normal authentication credentials. It would be ideal if the network diagnosis rule is strongly applied, but it is not easy because if the diagnosis rule is strengthened, normal traffic can be blocked. Above all, the biggest problem is that it is difficult to technically prevent attacks. Currently, most of the information security incidents are based on human error rather than technical ones. It is almost impossible to control the behavior of these people technically because they are based on accessing unsafe sites or clicking on email attachments without suspicion. You might think that human error can be controlled through education or penalties, then why do traffic accidents happen? We have to change the concept of defense. Because malicious code cannot be technically blocked from entering the network of the organization, prevention of malicious code injection should not be the mission of defense. If the attacker takes 10 steps to infiltrate the organization network and achieve the final objective, the defender must aim to block it before the 10th step. It takes a lot of time for an attacker to stealthily move within the organization network from stage 1 to stage 10. For defenders, this is a very valuable time for defense. Recent targeted threats are difficult to defend with the network alone, so network defense strategies and host defense strategies must be used together. The network defense strategy should be directed towards reducing the threat to the level of host detection, and the source, destination, and IP domain of traffic should be managed well in order to identify the cause of the accident. The host defense strategy should be an IR forensics analysis to identify the cause of the threat if the threat is identified with a threat over the predefined threshold. Once you have identified the attacker's penetration and spread process through network and host strategies, you should update the information protection system again to defend against exposure to the same threat. In this lecture, we will examine the influx of the accident and the spread method. First, we will look at how the incident occurred, in other words, how malware enters the system. Entry of malicious code can be categorized into 4 major methods: web, email, service, and storage medium. First, let's look at the malware inflow through the web. The biggest source of inflows is drive-by download, which exploits vulnerabilities in browsers, browser helper objects, and web applications. If it's a specific group targeted instead of unspecific multiple groups targeted, it is called watering hole attack. It is expected that 0-day is commonly used as vulnerability point, but in the case of a major accident, more likely, 1 day or weakness in a patch vulnerabilities are the causes of infection. Other common cause is by exploiting the installation of server-required programs with users' consent, such as ActiveX and Java Applet, to install malicious code. In addition, direct download of malicious code distributed via the web by the mistake of the user happens frequently. In some of Korea's accidents, after the well-known online community site Klien was taken over by an attacker, there were causes where a ransomware were deployed to users accessing the site by exploiting IE and flash vulnerabilities. In recent years, malvertising techniques have been used in combination with advertising services. And a number of malicious codes have been distributed in large quantities by targeting a CDN, Content Delivery Network, server having a relatively weak defense. To cope with malicious code infiltration through the web, it is necessary to use network separation policy, apply whitelist policy of web access URL, manage latest update patch, and educate for security awareness. Secondly, malicious code is infiltrated via email. Incorporate malicious site URL links into emails to induce clicks on links or induce executions of attachments to inject malware. In case of document file, various objects such as Flash and JavaScript can be inserted in the document so that it is possible to spread and distribute various objects of the vulnerability. Often, the vulnerability is not exploited and only the extension is changed to cause the user's mistakes. A typical example is Interpark information leakage at the end of 2016. Interpark is a top 5 online shopping mall in Korea, where the attacker masqueraded as a sibling of the internal employee and sent an email attachment to induce execution of attached file. After execution of attached file, it took 2 weeks to infiltrate internal network and steal the database file containing 10 million personal information. In order to counter malicious code infringement via email, it is necessary to restrict the use of external email or to adopt an email solution to implement aggressive security policies. In addition, training for maintenance of the latest update and security awareness should be done at the same time. Third, there is a malicious code inflow through the service. Organizations' applications with network functions and the application's vulnerabilities are used to infiltrate and spread through the network. Applications often perform updates on a regular basis, often replacing the update files on the update server to distribute malicious code within the organization. If the security of the target organization is higher than the security of the update server of the third-party application, the attacker will change the target to update server. In Korea, SK Communications' personal information leak occurred in 2011 and 35 million personal information was stolen. The attacker exploited the fact that the update did not verify the signature of the update file at the time of the update, replacing the malicious update file with the normal update file and introducing the malicious code. In order to respond to the inflow of malicious code through the service, file signature verification, update system security management, blocking of unnecessary service, maintenance of latest update, and education for security awareness should be carried out. Lastly, there is a malicious code inflow through the storage medium. In recent years, the use of storage medium has been banned or controlled by a solution, often reducing the number of cases of infection, but cases of infection are often reported. In the past, only USB-based media had been a threat, but recently, BYOD has also been used as a threat with laptop, smartphone, and SmartPad. An example in Korea is NH Bank's network paralysis. NH Bank outsourced the server maintenance to IBM. The attacker infected the IBM employee's laptop for the NH Bank network paralysis, and as soon as IBM employee connected the laptop to the NH Bank system, all data on the network server was deleted in sequence by a pre-written script. In the process of elimination, system was shut down to prevent the loss of all data, but it took 18 days to normalize the service. The most basic method for responding to the inflow of malicious code through the storage medium is to prohibit the use of the storage medium. If prohibition is difficult, it is necessary to carry out inspection when moving the internal network and the external network. In this regard, it is essential to educate employees about security awareness. When the execution of malicious code is detected in the network, it is important to judge whether the damage caused by the malicious code is confined to the discovered system or other systems. First, the source of the malicious code should be searched through the detailed analysis from the system where the infringement is identified. However, if the inflow is caused by direct external infections, such as infection by a website connection, it can be handled as a problem only for the relevant system. However, if the infection is caused by the internal network, systematic analysis should be performed. The first infringement system can be found by tracing the system from the infringement identification system to the source of the inflow. However, it can be difficult to trace back if significant time has passed or if most of the evidence is deleted. In this case, the first infringement system should be identified in the network device logs using IPs, indicators of compromised, IOC, obtained from the identified system. Malicious code that enters the organization for various reasons causes a reverse connection with the attacker and continuously executes the attacker's command. From an attacker's point of view, it is ideal to be able to get the information from the first penetrated system, but it is almost impossible due to a very complex modern enterprise environment. Therefore, the attacker continuously infects other systems in the internal network and spreads to the system in which the desired information is stored. Let's look at an example of how an attacker spreads through an internal network. If a specific system in the internal network is infected with malicious code and the system and network security configuration is good, it should be a problem only of the infected system. However, in many cases, the problem extends from the system to the entire organization. How can one system's infection affect an entire network of organizations? Also, how can we defend against such a problem? Let's look at this problem. The causes of malicious code spreading can be classified into 5 types. Let's take a closer look at each cause. First cause is insufficient management of account, password, and authority. Looking at the Active Directory environment, in the AD environment, domain admin has administrator privileges on all systems in AD. Therefore, it is necessary to minimize the use of the domain admin account, divide the subdomain for each management purpose, and manage the administrators for each subdomain. However, if the domain admin account is used indiscriminately for administrative convenience, the domain admin credentials obtained by the attacker will be able to control all the systems in the domain. In fact, many cases of targeted attacks are often caused by the use of AD domain admin privileges indiscriminately. If you do not use AD, it can be a problem if you use the same ID and password on different systems. Although the security basic is to set up different accounts and passwords for each host, this is not followed due to the ease of administration. When a new employee joins the system, A system with a default account and default password is usually issued. It is a general corporate guideline then to disable the account and guided to use and set up a new account and a new password. However, in many cases, new password is set up without disabling the default account. If multiple systems use the same ID and password, an attacker can control a system with the same ID, password just by taking control of one system. When an attacker penetrates the system, he usually identifies the authentication vulnerability first and looks for the vulnerable spots. Then, it scans the network and sniffs out important information that is transmitted to the network or detects vulnerable network services. Therefore, important information must be encrypted and transmitted, and the system must be operated by opening only necessary services. It takes a very long time to obtain the AD domain account credential that can control the entire internal network, or to find the vulnerability of the management server and to move the desired information to the stored system. The longer the period, the higher the likelihood of being identified by the security administrator. One of the attacker's methods for rapid penetration is spear phishing mail sent from the internal network. If you take control of one system, you can monitor the mail format from the internal network, so spear phishing mail sent from the internal network is very sophisticated compared to phishing mail from the outside. Also, it is very difficult for the recipient to recognize it as malicious mail because it is sent through the normal server. Next, if shared resource management is insufficient, it may cause internal network spread. The attacker first checks the status of the shared resources of each system and uploads and executes the malicious code to the resources whose setting or update is insufficient. In order to control the system of the internal network freely, the attacker attempts to gain control of the entire system by attacking the AV management server, the DRM server, and the DLP server, which manage the internal network system. For applications and servers that are managed in the internal network, updates must be kept up to date and monitored to respond to known attacks. In the case of a server managed in the internal network, there are many cases where the security vulnerability check is not performed frequently. So it is necessary to continually check for the service vulnerability at the organization level. Since internal network spreading of malicious code is mostly based on administrative weakness, it is necessary to configure system and network to enhance security. In the Windows operating system, the initial installation state is very vulnerable from a security point of view, so the security configuration of the system should be strengthened through the local security policy. In addition, unnecessary unused accounts and services should be deactivated and monitored continuously. Just by strengthening these basic settings and monitoring, you can prevent internal network spreading and greatly slow it down. In order to trace the internal network spreading of malicious code, the incident-related traces identified from the host analysis should be indexed. Recently, attackers often use anti-forensics techniques to remove traces when moving systems. Therefore, it is very difficult to trace the system if the indicators of compromised IOC that can identify the characteristics of the infringed system is not managed. We have discussed the way malicious code is introduced and spread. So far, because we have focused on network-based defense for security, host has been relatively poorly maintained. By strengthening security policies and setting up and monitoring host, much of the targeted attacks can be protected and detected in advance. Before it's too late, host-based defense strategies should be integrated into current information protection strategies.